This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon. Justin Barclay is a man who needs no introduction. Justin's not just the voice of conservative West Michigan, he's the voice of Michigan. In my side of the state, in Metro Detroit, Justin does 3 hours a day on Detroit's 9-10 a.m. He's a fill-in host for Glenn Beck, and he's my friend. Justin, welcome back to the Enjoyer Podcast.
It's always a pleasure, and I love our conversations, James.
It is always a blessing to talk to you. Let's start with the story of the day. It came out yesterday. So from the Detroit News, which ran this as an exclusive, which I thought was odd given that this affects all 10 million people in Michigan, a Chinese national, 19-year-old student at the University of Michigan, votes in Ann Arbor, and the upshot of it is the vote will still count, A, and B, we wouldn't know about any of this had this person not reported themselves. What'd you make of that?
First of all, I gotta play this because every time we talk about it,
China. Yeah, feel free to intersperse that throughout, you know.
So the student from China, he going to the U of M, he goes and he guesses on the same day he registers and votes. The only reason we know about it is because he came back and asked for his ballot back or something.
Right.
And they go, wait a minute, what? And then you said that insult to injury, yes, it's going to count. But there was a story a week or two back in another place, and I don't remember, because as I say on my show, it's like drinking from a fire hose. It really feels like that. My brain can't hold all this stuff. Where another similar situation happened, they caught somebody doing something. There were some shenanigans. And then they go, but I think it may have been Colorado. They go, but
I believe it was 3 votes or something like it was more than one vote. And then they did announce the same thing, that we have no way of not counting the votes.
Same thing, though. Patted themselves on the back. Look at us. We caught this. And, of course, we're going to hold this individual accountable. And then they go, but the votes are still going to count. You go, wait a minute. Why is this bad? Well, think about it this way. One bad vote, just one, cancels out somebody's
legitimate
actual
vote.
It's a civil rights violation. You have violated my rights, and who knows whose vote it was. Now, if it's a vote for Kamala Harris, then maybe I'm okay with that. But no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. I don't care who you vote for. You have the right to vote. You have the right not to vote. I believe you ought to vote. I believe it's your duty to vote, just like you have the right to burn the flag, I guess, if you want to. I think it's one of the dumbest things you could do because, you're burning the symbol for the thing that gives you the freedom to do that. Try that anywhere else, right? But my point is that it cancels out everybody's or other people's votes. And I just saw, I don't know if you follow this guy on Twitter X, a fantastic account I just found called Down I-75. And James made this great point, which was if you can get one through, you can get 10,000 through. We don't know. That's the point. We don't know
you
how
can
many
get a
of
million
these
through, and so now that flood through the southern border is of real import. So we have people who are not here legally, so we know they're willing to do things that are illegal.
Mm-hmm.
They came from a bad place. They probably figure they're going to be returned there at some point. How do we know they weren't sent here to do this?
No. This is just wacky tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory.
And the way I read this story, and our friend Anna Hoffman, friend of the program, she had a great breakdown of the thing behind the thing on her Twitter, Shoes On Please, where she's saying, well, they've told you the method of the illegal vote. They told you the vote will count. They told you that they wouldn't know that this had happened if not for the self-reporting. Is the point of the story to inform us that our elections in Michigan are secure? Or to inform bad actors of how insecure they are?
What a fantastic question. Now I've heard and seen, and I get to see because people in the chat will say things quite a bit, and I think very interesting people and very smart, just like Anna, in my chat when I'm talking throughout the day. I can read it all. So one of them asked, when it came to this story, very similarly, is it possible that one of the reasons why we're hearing about this is that now? I mean, and I think you have to explore all these. Part of the idea of the conspiracy theorists is I think you have to be able to critically think and explore all the options and think about what those might be. Now, they're not always going to be, that's it. Or this one's a little more likely. That one's probably not as likely.
Right.
Is it possible? And you have to go through all that. It's just gaming it out. But one of the questions that they asked was, is it possible that the state of Michigan, they've got the polling, and internally, here's why this might be likely. State of Michigan is going to go for Trump. And they know this. They've known it for a while now. Matter of fact, that's why Alyssa Slotkin, as a Democrat candidate for Senate, has started running ads that show her talking about, I'll work with Trump. Well, wait a minute. Top of the ticket says he's Hitler. Slotkin says she's going to work with him. How do you work with Hitler?
Right.
So there's something that doesn't add up. And so they know something, they see something. The question is it then, when you throw all of this into the mix, is it then maybe the intention to get Michigan and get people calling it into question so that we don't really know what happens with the state, and there are too many questions, and we can't certify, and we have to let a legal process play out. We know that Kamala Harris has just hired officially Mark Elias to go through and start digging his teeth into some of these issues. One thing is for sure, nothing is normal about where we are now.
No.
None of this is normal. The candidate no one ever voted for her as a candidate for president. She never made it through that process, the primary. They just anointed her.
The late replacement theory actually happened.
So whatever they end up doing at this point, we're already off the rails.
Yes.
Any of these things is possible. No, I don't know. But one thing I will tell you, as I had talked to, she's running for clerk in Washtenaw County. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is that her name's Samantha Strayer. She had reached out to me back when they were in the primary, and a friend of a friend said, would you interview her on the Detroit station? I said, sure, absolutely. So had her on. We had a great conversation. I said, why don't you come back when, if you win and you get into the general, I'd love to have you back. And she did. She won. She got into the general, and she, like a week ago or a few days ago, said, hey, can I come back? I said, absolutely. So we had her scheduled to be on today. So this story about what just happened in her own backyard, just the timing was just there. So I had a great conversation with her. I think you'd love to talk to her too, but fascinating. I said, it's weird about the whole process. You started to get through, like, how does this happen? That's one of the questions I want to know. How does this young man going to school there at the University of Michigan, how does he, Chinese national, how does he get to vote in an American election?
China.
Well, you go in, you bring your student ID, and you sign a piece of paper and you pinky promise that you're supposed to vote. And I guess Jocelyn Benson, or the clerk there at Washington, I guess they didn't check to see if he had his fingers crossed or maybe his toes or any of this. The pinky promise was good enough for them. And that is a fatal flaw in the system in general.
Well, it's not. I mean, the purpose of a system is what it does.
Oh, you're saying it's the function.
that is exactly the design of the thing. And so when Michigan voters approve a thing saying you are going to have to use ID to vote, but then there's the biggest loophole ever where if you don't have ID, you can attest to be who you are. And so now we're stuck in a pickle where in our lowest trust,
he even had ID,
right?
Which is
we're in the lowest trust version of Michigan that's ever existed in 2024, and we're relying on high trust techniques like people saying who they are, attesting to be this person, that person.
Right.
So it is a complete mismatch for the times. That was done for the point of creating doubt in the system.
So I have to ask this question then. There's another story out there today. And this other story is about people voting and multiple times, these duplicate votes. Now, this is how it was reported, I saw. 114,545 Michigan voters have cast, in the voter file, have cast 279,113 ballots this election. One of them, according to some of the data that the attorney was researching, one of them voted 29 times using 19 different addresses in Detroit and Highland Park. The Secretary of State was asked about this and said, no. The RNC got involved too. They said it was a glitch. We fixed it. We fixed the glitch. There was an error. So what you're telling me, though, is in a system where a glitch or an error is possible, is it possible that that glitch or that error is the function of the system and it's not a glitch? In fact, it was designed to work that way. Is this the same? Is it the same premise here that can we apply this to the same story?
Well, we have, so we had the voter assisted terminals that were having issues processing straight ticket ballots. I mean, and then you have Jocelyn Benson, election Barbie, standing on that stage at a press conference that she's designed to portray strength and competence and give you confidence that the elections will be secure, and you're left to take her word for it, that she will seek accountability with Dominion, that they'll actually do what they were hired to do. And so when Jocelyn Benson is talking about fellow citizens in Michigan who question her shoddy work, she says, I'll come after you. When she's talking about a contractor who doesn't do their job, which makes her job harder, which makes all of us have less trust and less faith in the election system, she says she'll seek accountability. I was always taught as a journalist to listen for the dog that's not barking, right? Because if your dog would normally bark in that situation, but they're somehow not, something might be really wrong. And so the way you do it in practical terms is, for every action or every event, there's kind of an expected reaction. And what you have to be able to do is say, what's the gap? What's the gulf between what I'm seeing and what I'm, and what a normal human would do? And when you look at Benson's demeanor at that press conference, we'll have that video on the podcast if you watch it on YouTube. This isn't a person who's angry at a bad contractor.
What do we do about all this? What can be done about it all?
I know some good people talking about election security issues, possibly. I'm not at liberty to say that, but talking about election security issues, we'll say. And there's people who know exactly what to do, but our problems in Michigan are constitutional at this point. It wouldn't just take a good legislature. It won't just take flipping the House in November. Republicans are confident they will flip the House. Even so, you still have a Democrat governor. You still have the whole Michigan Senate up in 2026. There's some heavy lifts ahead. But I think the real battle and the real opportunity right now is to move the Overton window. They say that with addiction, the first step is admitting you have a problem. We have a problem. This Chinese national story, what the media means to exonerate Benson and say that she's being tough and to sweep it all under the rug, I think is exhibit A that you use. If one can do it, 10,000 can do it. They wouldn't necessarily. If Xi Jinping himself said, I want to mess with Michigan and make people in swing states doubt the credibility of their elections, what would he do differently? There's not a thing he would do differently. This is a stink bomb that's been presented to us, and as it's been since Joseph, since Jesus, what man means for evil can be flipped for good. God means it for good. But you have to take this moment and say, this door has been left wide open. Maybe we'll be victimized a time or two. We'll have to be hyper vigilant these next few years. But we were not going to put anyone forward who's not serious about closing the barn door.
You know, I think you're right. One of the things that I had this conversation with Samantha today, but I thought to myself, I'm not a rocket scientist like Pat Colbeck or Elon Musk or any of these guys who are like now starting to get really into all this stuff.
Right.
I'm just an average guy, and I look at this and I think it's pretty simple. I think give everybody the day off, one day, election day. Who wouldn't want the day off? Have everybody go in person, unless you absolutely cannot be there. You know, there are cases where that's a reality. Military serving overseas, etc. But then have everybody vote on paper ballots. If you want to get, serious and you want to get into watermarks and serial numbers and stuff like that, I guess, you can talk about those things. Definitely want to make sure that they're using an ID. Got to make sure the voter ID is there. And we've got to be able to confirm that when they did register to vote, that they are a citizen,
right,
and that they're eligible to vote, all
right,
of those things. But then do it in a very, I think, decentralized way in little precincts where just a small handful of people are voting, in your neighborhood. It's people you probably will know these people. And you can count them, paper, ballots, all of this. You can do this. You have the answers. Same day. There'll be no waiting. There's none of this, Arizona's still counting. I guess we'll know in a few more days. We'll see what they say. There's none of that. And the fact that we've even allowed ourselves to get to this place, again, goes back to that question of, and I think you proved it, is in my mind with these elections, there should never even be an appearance of impropriety.
No.
And yet it's wide open here. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, he got in some hot water, and the Post lost about 10% of their subscriber base because they decided that they were not going to endorse Yas Queen Kamala Harris. They were going to actually let the reader decide for themselves.
Wow.
They were not, and I've talked about this before. The media holds two tools in its hand, but one of them requires the other to work. One tool is credibility. The other tool is the ability to influence events. And they have shot through all their arrows. They can't influence events anymore. And it's like they finally have built the rock that's too heavy to lift. They can't influence events because they don't have the credibility. Right. There was a great New York Magazine story about this. I want to get the quote. It was actually perfect. So it ends with the TV executive, anonymous, of course, who says, if half the country has decided that Trump is qualified to be president, that means they're not reading any of this media, and we've lost the audience completely. A Trump victory means mainstream media is dead in its current form. And the question is, what does it look like after?
Yeah.
How did we get to this point?
Well, they built that rock, and they broke their back trying to lift it. And that's the problem. But the lift was at a time when, and I'm glad you brought this up because I want to talk about this with you for a while now, but I think at the time when there are all these new technologies in radio right now, one of the biggest mistakes a lot of radio companies or radio is making in general is they're still trying to do things the old way. And they're competing with each other in ways I think they're cannibalizing each other. Probably the very same way with newspapers, et cetera, where they don't acknowledge that I'm not just competing against other radio stations right now.
Right.
I'm competing against everything else, all the other tech that's out there, all the other content that's out there when people will be on their way to work, in their cars, at work, wherever they might be, and it's all here. And not only is it here, can I consume these things, but I can produce these things.
Yes.
All right here.
Everybody is a star, as the Roots would say.
So it's not just you, it's not just me,
Mm-hmm.
anybody and everybody. And in fact, we've gotten some of the
Anna
best
Hoffman,
reporting.
Patriot Post girl. I mean, these are citizens.
Yes. And we've gotten some of the best reporting from these people, some of the best analysis from these people, and some of the best, really just on the scenes, sort of North Carolina and these hurricanes in Maui and all of this. It's coming from people, and there are no more gatekeepers. And the media in general, it's not just radio, it's television, it's newspapers for sure. They're acting like none of this thing isn't happening. They're acting like they are still the only game in town, and people are laughing at them. They're laughing at them as they find their ways falling into obscurity and charging a nickel a month or whatever it is for a subscription anymore. Like, who cares?
Our friends at the Detroit News they don't get it. Like, I bumped into one of those guys this week out on an assignment. It's nothing personal. I don't know you or care enough about you for it to be personal. But I would like you to remain in business. I would like the fact that I worked there for 10 years to be something I can remain proud of, and not something I feel the need to explain away or say that it was different in my day. But I look at them and I don't recognize journalism anymore.
It's not true.
The amount of times where as a breaking news reporter, I had to go back and either you were beat or someone else was beat and it was your problem. And day two, a story that the Free Press had first or Click on Detroit had first. Chasing news is part of the job. And for them to, on the Alyssa Slotkin story, I think about.
Yeah.
New York Post and the Michigan Enjoyer are pretty much the only two places where you've read Slotkin critical stories. It's the only place where you read that this lady is a fake farmer who doesn't pay taxes, that she lied about being a farmer in a room full of farmers, that she broke up a 25-year military marriage, and then, as she embarked on her Senate career, dumped that guy too, that she's never bought a home in Michigan, that she pays plenty of taxes out in D.C., but takes as many tax credits as she can in Michigan, that her first vote ever cast in Michigan was in 2018, and it was for herself. These are the things you might want to know about a person before you elevate them to the upper chamber, and they don't have to worry about anything for another 6 years. And the Detroit News not only got beat on those stories, they could have had that stuff. I'm sure they were pitched it. They didn't use it.
Yeah.
And like, why would they not?
Is it because I like a lot of the stuff that I see them posting online is geared directly towards an online follower or subscriber, and they don't want to tick those people off. And I'm just asked that. I mean, look what just happened to the Washington Post and some of these other papers that are losing subscribers by the boatload right now. I said people online, oh, today is boycott this day, or we just quit our subscription to the Post. And it's like, does Jeff Bezos care whether you quit your subscription to the Post or not? He doesn't care.
No, that was a call. The point of calling the herd is that there's less members of the herd left. He wanted to reshape two things: his reader base, which was far too left and far too extreme, and his newsroom, which was far too left and far too extreme. And the problem that both those groups have is their intolerance that people unlike them exist on this planet. They can't get over the fact that they can't make you think what they want. They hate you for it.
That is the strangest thing too, isn't it? Because coming from, I think, the other side of the other perspective, where it was truly the American that I grew up in, is you used to hear all the time. You don't hear this anymore. Hey, it's a free country.
I remember hearing that. I haven't heard that in about 20 years.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I don't care what you think. It's a free country.
Right.
Not anymore. No, because you're Hitler or you're a Nazi if you don't believe the same things that I believe. And I don't even know if half these people even believe these things that they say, but they're just going along with it. And we're the Nazis. That's just the strangest thing to me. And what does that do to us in the long run? I think that's why really bright people, just brilliant people like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and some of these people that are out there now having these conversations, and some of the folks have come along since, like Bill Ackman and whatnot. One of the things that really concern them the most is the threat to free speech, because here's the thing. The real question is, what does that make us, and what does that do to us as a country and as competitors on the world stage?
Right.
If we can't bump up against each other with our differences of opinion or perspective, as the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. If we can't go back and forth and talk about, well, here's how I see it. Now, this is how I see it. If we can't have those conversations and then come back together at the end of the day, what does that do to us on the world stage? How weak does that make us?
You know, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the Tower of Babel. And man's greatest sin, the one we're still, trying to replicate today, is trying to find equality with God himself. And so you had men trying to literally, build their way into heaven. And what I love about that story is God's solution to it. When men got too big for their britches, he confused their language. And so what we've been living with ever since is that most human struggle of, how do I coexist with, in this world, people who are unlike, don't look like, sound like, talk like, speak the same language as myself? And we've been fighting those battles ever since. Yeah. And so, for all this talk about civil war and all that stuff online, man, go down to Livonia. Just a few miles south of me. You drive around any neighborhood, you're going to see Trump signs next to Harris signs. They might not all go to the same barbecues, but fundamentally we are able to live together, and there's not a state of civil war. We're neighbors, and for the most part we act that way. There's actually very little political violence in America, but the stuff that's the most dangerous, that's resulted in a man getting shot in the head on TV, that's resulted in Steve Scalise getting shot at a practice for a congressional baseball game just months into Trump, that stuff we poo-poo. So violence is explained away, but silence is violence, and being anti-trans is violence, and you being a white man who's had success is violence. At some point, it's on us for falling for the programming.
Oh, for sure. There's a woman who is a biologist and a writer, and she did a really, I thought it was incredible on a number of levels, but she said, I had to figure out a way. His name's Jumi Kim. She's on X. She said, I had to figure out a way to explain to my friends and family why I'm voting for President Trump this time around. She's a Democrat, or was. And so she said, I couldn't figure out how to do this best, so I made this. And this was a video, like 2 hours long. And it's the receipts. She brought the receipts. She said, and she starts with media lies. This is what I believed about him. And actually she starts with Charlottesville.
Oh yeah.
And she
very
shows,
fine people.
Here's what the media, and it was weird to me because I consider myself to be up on all this and know all of this, and had seen that clip for the context.
Thought
but
you
I hadn't
had
seen,
right.
Well, I hadn't seen as much of the clip as she actually provided. It was even more pronounced with what I saw, the full clip of what I saw, and how they were trying to bait him into saying things and doing things, the media and whatnot. She's got like 2 hours of this, and it's one piece after the next, after the next, after the next. And to me, again, it was so mind blowing because she's just an everyday person, an American who said, I had really struggled with this, and I want people to see it. Do you know, I sent that to somebody I know and love and care about, who's voting Democrat and has for a while, and this person, not going to name drop or anything, wouldn't even look at it. And
I mean, it's kind of a
literally
long video.
Wouldn't even take a look though.
I am a short video nationalist myself, but
I'm with
they
you.
didn't even get the upshot of it. They didn't even take a glance, it sounds like.
Not because I don't want to see this. It wasn't.
They don't want to complicate their view of the world.
That's it.
They don't want new information.
They don't want to know the truth.
And too much new information that's come into his life, I'm guessing over these last months, has disproved a lot of his worldview. And that's a hard thing when reality bumps up against what you say you think.
It causes real pain.
It does.
You know, that cognitive dissonance causes real pain when people are having to deal with this stuff.
And so he can't even face the truth lest he be swayed by it. The need to avoid it. Look, I could watch their programming all day and it wouldn't move me 1 inch because I don't care who they are or what they say. He's scared of the light.
I think there's a lot of people like that out there.
Yeah.
Because I had some really, about a month or so back, I had some really tough conversations with this person. And they actually went well. But I said, you know, because this person also told me, I've already voted. This is, you know, I said, I'm not trying to change your mind about this election. In fact, this video that I want you to watch isn't about the election. In fact, I think it's much bigger. I think it's about understanding where we are, how you're being lied to over and over and over again. And so that you can be aware of that and make better decisions, just like in everyday life and everything. We had a conversation about a month back and it was about, oh, you didn't know this was a fact. And it was COVID. It was, hey, they made up the 6 foot social distancing. They
made it up.
You know, the arrows.
That will always bother me.
The masks, you know, all of these things. Hey, the plexiglass. Remember the plexiglass when you went to go check out? They were going to touch everything.
I remember being told your face shield's not enough. And it's literally, excuse me for breathing.
Yes. Well, this person started and I think has seen the light on some of that stuff, and the mind started to wink of the light bulb. You can see it kind of flickering going off there. And do you mean the news is lying to me? I said, they've always been some way, somehow, and it's just gotten so bad. And this, well, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to believe? And this is somebody that has a steady diet of, you know, CNN and whatnot. And, it's tough. I think people are waking up, but you know, some of these people are going to be all the way up until the end. They're going to be hanging.
So I want to give the short course on journalism. So most journalism in America is like what we did at Michigan Capitol Confidential, where whether it's a group or one rich guy, what's published reflects the views of that person or that group. And so partisan journalism is journalism as our founding fathers knew it. And so people were open about their aims. They were not shy about it. And so you might have a Federalist paper, you might have a Democrat paper, Democrat, Republican, throughout history. It's been this way where think about a guy like Byron York at the Washington Examiner. No one could ever say Byron York is not a great reporter. He's one of the best reporters in America. But he is a conservative reporter. I do not think that the conservatism comes at the expense of the reporting. Where it will manifest is what stories are chosen, what's not chosen, who's targeted, that kind of thing. But if he's writing about it, you're going to get his sensibility. And I'm fine with that. I think that's honest. A non-political version is John Bacon, I would say, covers University of Michigan football. John's a Michigan fan, but John has the goods. And so we always understood that, like, to me, Mother Jones, which is far left, but they're honest about it. Mother Jones is more honest than the New York Times.
Right.
Because New York Times purports to be a newspaper for all 300 million people. In fact, it serves a extremely narrow sliver of New York, let alone America, it's upper crust New York. You read New York Times trying to be like those people, but the idea that it's automatically the best paper, why would you think that? You think that because unlike Mother Jones, unlike the Washington Examiner, they say what we present is just news. Mm-hmm. And there's no such thing, and there's never been a such thing. It's not honest, and that's why it's finally breaking down.
I don't think it can happen soon enough, in my opinion. I'm here for it. And you know what's interesting, because I feel the same way and I think you put that so great. I am not unbiased. I don't really think any of us can be unbiased.
Anyone who says they are is lying to you or lying to themselves.
Yeah. So when I tell stories or talk about what I'm seeing out there, I'm always doing that through the lens of how I see the world anyway. And I think I'm more honest about that. I tell people that. And that's like, I think what I respect about what you do too. We are trying to get to the truth. But it is also coming through our perspective, and we're not hiding that.
No. And the transparency, and again, this comes back to those two tools. They want the credibility of the objective fact finder, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
While acting like someone who's there to influence events for their preferred team. Mm-hmm. So Byron York says what he is. These reporting nerds that act like they take the view from nowhere, they're liars. And the Bible talks about how a backslider is actually worse than someone who just never believed in the first place.
We should do this more often. You and I think we should have another conversation again soon. I really enjoyed this. Every time we get a chance to talk on the radio, it's always too short. You know,
it's like it just starts and then it has to end.
Well, it kind of feels like it did today too, but at least we got a little bit more out though.
Absolutely. So Justin, tell people about, you have a community, you have the radio show. Tell people where they can find Justin Barclay.
Every day we're doing the show. In fact, I do a Detroit radio show from 6 to 9 on 9:10 a.m. Detroit's News Talk Superstation. You can listen to it the old fashioned way, like on the radio, right? We also have the technology where you can stream this show on Facebook and X, and
iHeart Network,
and all those great places.
Yeah.
So you can get it there. Plus, I do a show in West Michigan from 9 to 10. Then we do an after show. So we do the show on News Radio 1300 and 106.9 FM. We do an after show at 10 from 10 to 10:30. We try to talk about all the things we didn't get a chance to talk to about. And we do podcast every week. So we'll have long form conversations like this one. That'll be a part of a podcast. And we just have fun. So justinbarclay.com is where you can download all those things and find all the good stuff that we're up to. But man, I'm just grateful we get to have conversation. James, you're one of the good guys, and I love that you're out there doing it. And I know we just barely scratched the surface on this today, but like the future of where things are going, you're right at the forefront of it.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what's coming.
Absolutely. It's a blessing to see your face and hear your voice. Talk to you soon.
You got it. God bless.